Well, hello there. I'm glad you joined me today for Art Class Live. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light, and we are still talking about color this week. Now, last week we talked about three different sets of primary colors, and we'll look at those again. But we're going to do something a little bit different today. Now, you notice my opening screen here is of what looks like a planet. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit, digitally, obviously. You can do similar things with paint or paper, or, well, obviously you're going to use paper, but paint or crayons or whatever if you don't have digital. But I thought this would be kind of a fun experiment with color as we wrap up this little section on color. And I want to do just a quick review, especially if you weren't here last time, that last time we covered that there are, whoops, I'm not on the right layer. Got to be on the right layer if you're going to draw on it. There are three different sets of primary colors. We usually are familiar with the set that is typically what an artist would use, which is red, yellow, and blue. And that's the ones that you hear about in class and school, and those are typically the ones that if you're going to be painting or drawing with colored pencils or crayons or whatever, those are your primary colors. But I mentioned that there are two other sets. One is if you are working with print, and I'll write artist over here. If you're working with print, it's CMY. Cyan, magenta, and yellow. Those are your primaries for print. And then if you're working with light, like here on this computer screen, then your primaries are red, green, oops, no, not red, green, and M. That is not correct. It is red, green, and blue. And if you'll notice over here, I can't draw all the way, but I've got my color editor here. And you'll notice down here it's set to RGB. So it's red, green, and blue. And we're going to be doing some color. We're going to play around with colors a little bit here. And even though I'm doing these digitally, this is something that might help you if you are, like if you're wanting to paint with acrylics, if you're wanting to paint with watercolor, with oils or whatever, or even pastels and colored pencils, but to a lesser degree with them. But with colors that you actually mix, then this might be of some help to you. Something I learned a number of years ago, and that's what's sometimes called the 6-color palette. Oh, no, not pellet, palette. Boy, I can't spell today. P-A-L-E-T-T-E. There's palette. 6-color palette. Now, to show you what I mean by the 6-color palette, we're going to go to a different layer here. And turn that one off, and I'm going to turn on my tic-tac-toe board. No, we're not going to play tic-tac-toe. But we are going to look at colors, and I want to put in our primaries first. Now, even though I'm doing this digitally, we're going to use we're going to use the artist's primaries. So we're going to use red, yellow, and blue. And I've already got it set to red, but I also want to call your attention over here to the color editor. Now, if you do some digital work, or if you've got a digital art app on your tablet or phone or whatever, then you will have something similar to this. It really varies from app to app, and so yours might not look exactly like this, and you may not have this particular option. But more often than not, you're going to have at least a color wheel like this where you can choose your colors. Now, this color wheel is set to slider, and that gives me control over red, green, and blue, which are my light primaries. But I'm going to use them to mix my artist's primaries as well. So I'm going to make yellow. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to start with red. So I'm going to come over here to my red slider. You notice the value is set at 0, and I'm going to bring that all the way over. And if you notice the dots on the wheel move when I do that, they go all the way over here to the right corner and to the center of the red. And that gives me a nice pure red. Got to get it on the right layer. There we go. So I've got a nice pure red there. Okay, now let's go with blue. Well, to go with blue, I'm going to turn that red off, and I'm going to turn the blue all the way up. Okay, so now I've got a pure blue, and I'm going to come down here to the bottom so we can stay with red, yellow, and blue, and I'll put yellow in the middle. I'm going to come down here, and I've got my nice pure primary blue. Now, how do I make yellow? Because I got red, green, and blue here. Well, remember, in light, red and green make yellow. So I turn the red and green sliders all the way up, and I've got my pure yellow. And actually, I'm going to make one little change here so you can see these colors better. I'm going to go to my background layer, and I'm going to make that a little bit more gray. That should let those colors show up a little bit better. Okay, there we go, and that shouldn't affect them too much. Okay, so we've got red, yellow, and blue. Now, those are the primary colors, and if you've studied much art, you've probably heard somebody say, well, you know, you can make any colors you want from your primaries, red, yellow, and blue. And that's true to a degree, but you don't always get the variety, with particularly, again, if you're working with paint and you just get, you know, a straight red, a straight yellow, and a straight blue. Yes, you can mix a lot of different colors, but you're not going to have maybe the range of colors that you would really like. So what do? You go to Hobby Lobby or some other art store, and you look for paints, and then you see there are about 5 million different tubes of paint, and, you know, 14 different reds, you know, 70 different yellows, you know, 64 different blues, and you say, which one should I get? And that's not even counting the neutral colors. So this is a suggestion. If you want to keep your paint budget down, but you want to work with primaries, and, you know, how do you do that? Well, you use what's called a 6-color palette, or more often it's referred to as a split primary palette. So let me write that there. So if you're taking notes, I hope you're taking notes. That makes me feel very useful if you're doing that. So we're going to talk about split primary. A split primary palette. And what that is instead of just pure red, yellow, and blue, you're going to use a variation. You're going to use a warm red. Let's put warm over here. And you're going to use a cool red. And you're going to use a warm yellow and a cool yellow. And you're going to use a warm blue and a cool blue. Now, if you watched the previous video, not mine, but on art class, Pat talked about warm and cool colors. And if you come over to the color wheel, you know, your cool colors are the colors that look cool, not cool as in, whoa, that's cool, but cool as in, you know, I'm freezing. You know, your blues, purple, the bluish purple, some of your, you know, on the edge green here, your warm colors are the colors that would look warm, yellows and oranges and reds. So, you know, those are warm and cool colors. But you can, even within a specific color, you can find a color that will be cool, like you can find a cool red, and you can find a warm red. And that's what I'm talking about. If you go into the store and you're trying to decide what kind of primary colors you want to buy, then you're going to look for one of each. And we're not even looking at buying just straight color here. You can, but if you're trying to keep your costs down and you want to just get 6, this is what you would do. First of all, let's think in terms of a cool red. How do we make a cool red? Well, cool on here is going to be moving that red in the direction of blue, which is a cool color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to turn my blue up a little bit. Oops, wait a minute, I'm still in black, so I need to turn my red on. Okay, there we go. I'm going to turn my blue up a little bit. Now, I don't want to go all the way over to where I'm in magenta or purple, because that's too far. But what I want to do is I want to bring that over to where it's still red, but it's just kind of on the edge. And when I get to that one, I've got a cool red. It's still red, but it has, it's on the edge of purple and blue. Still red, but on the edge of purple and blue. Okay, so let me take that one back. Oops, did the wrong one. Okay, so what about a warm? Well, remember, warm is going to be in the direction of yellow. So I'm going to add green. And again, if I push it too far, it brings me into yellow, it brings me into orange. I don't want to go that far. I want it to still be red. So I'm going to add enough green here that it's still red, but it's right on the edge of orange. That might actually even be a bit too far. It just depends. And again, like I said last week, depending on the kind of monitor or phone or tablet you're looking at and what its display is like, your colors may not look exactly like mine. But what I've got here is a pure red. I've got a red that's on the edge of magenta, but it's not quite there. And I've got something that's on the edge of orange, but it's not quite there. So those are my split primary reds. Now, if you're going to a store and you're wanting to buy these colors, there are a lot of different names, but two that are familiar, and this one doesn't actually look like that, but if I were looking for a cool red, I would look, whoa, that's not going to write really well, is it? Let me take that out of there. I would look for a color called alizarin crimson. Okay, over here, I would look for, I'm going to just write CAD, C-A-D. It's actually cadmium, CAD red. Okay, so those are your split primaries for red. What about yellow? Okay, let's go to yellow. Remember, we turn both the red and the green on full. We've got yellow. Okay, let's move it in the direction of a cool, so we want it to come over here to green. So I'm going to turn down the red a bit. Whoa. And it's going to move in that direction. Again, I don't want to go all the way over to where it's yellow-green. That's an intermediate color or a tertiary color. I want it to still be yellow, but just on the edge of a yellow-green. Okay. And if you go to the paint store or the art store, you can usually find lemon yellow, and that is going to be a pretty good cool yellow. Okay, so let's go back to full strength here. Okay, now I'm going to turn down the green so we can move in the other direction for a warmer. And again, I don't want to go all the way over to orange. I want it to still be yellow, but I want it to be further over. And that's a pretty good one there. And so that is my warm yellow. And that one would be CAD yellow. Okay. All right, now let's do the blues. Okay, so I'm going to turn the reds and the greens off. I'm going to turn blue all the way up so I have my pure blue. Okay, I want to move in the direction of, let's see, we want actually I want a cool blue first, so I want to go this way, so I'm going to turn up the green. The green is going to move it over. Remember, I don't want to go all the way over here to aqua or yellow or bluish green. I want to kind of keep it like that. And so there I have my warm blue. And there are a couple different possibilities depending on how dark or how light you want it. One is cerulean blue, or I never know how to pronounce this, but it's P-T-H-A-L-O, so phthalo blue. Either one of those is in that direction. Phthalo is a bit darker than that. And if you go in the opposite direction, okay, so I'm going to add in red this time for a cool blue. Again, don't want to go all the way over into purple. I want it to still be blue. And there you have, oops, a nice dark blue. And that often is ultramarine. And that's almost purple, what I've got. But I can't write and talk at the same time. Ultramarine. Okay, that's ultramarine blue. And that really, what I have on the screen isn't a true ultramarine blue, but it'll represent that. So if you're wanting to buy just 6 tubes of paint from which you can have a pretty good range of color mixing, those are the ones that you want to get. Or very similar. Again, you can, once you begin to get a feel for cool and warm colors, and then you can find a straight red, yellow, and blue kind of as your benchmark. It's easy to tell when you pick up a tube of paint whether it is on the cool side or whether it is on the warm side. Now, one of the things that you need if you're going to do this, again with paint, is you are going to need a neutral to work with. And so what you want to try to find is something that's not really black, because black kills color, but I would go for a very dark brown. You can go with a burnt umber sometimes. Another one that often is recommended is Payne's Gray. Burnt umber is more brown, Payne Gray is more blue. So, you actually could get both of those, because Payne's Gray would be a cool neutral and burnt umber would be a warm neutral. And then again, if you're painting, then you're going to want to have white. I don't need white too much when I'm doing digital work, but for painting you do. So that's just a quick summary of how to put together a small palette that will fit within your budget, but lets you do pretty much any colors that you want to create. Okay, we have about 8 minutes left. I wanted to show you how to draw a planet. Now again, this is pretty much a digital project here, so you may not be able to do this exactly like I'm showing you if you're working with pigments and paper. But if you do have a digital app, you can follow along with most of these steps. I'm going to move pretty quickly, and understand that your digital app may not look like mine. I've got Autodesk Sketchbook here, but almost all digital apps can do what I'm about to do. You just have to figure out how yours does it, because they all tend to be a little bit different. So first thing I want to draw, if I'm going to draw a planet, is I'm going to choose kind of a dark brown here for my base color, because I'm going to draw kind of a Jupiter-ish looking planet. Okay, now I want to create a circle. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit this little tab that's going to let me create a circle. And I'm going to start right in the middle of the paper. I'm holding down the Shift key. Now again, that's because I'm working at a desktop computer. That lets me draw a perfect circle. So I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to come over here to what's called Quick Transform, and that's going to just let me move the circle into the center. Again, I'm using Autodesk Sketchbook. It's a free program if you want to get it and follow along on your desktop computer. Okay, now I'm going to go to my bucket tool up here. It's a flood fill, so I'm just going to fill that color in. And so now I've got a nice base color to work with. And so I'm going to get out of that. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my airbrush. Airbrush is a really versatile tool for most digital painting, and so you want to get familiar with your airbrush if you have one. I'm going to give us a little bit of shape here, and let's see. Oops. Okay, well, I'm glad I did this because it's going to show you what I forgot to do that I needed to do. I'm trying to color my planet, and no, my background is messed up now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo out of that. Make sure it's all out. And one thing I forgot to do is I come over here, and in Autodesk, I have this little lock. I hit that, and what that does is that locks transparency. Sometimes it's also called alpha lock. And what it means is if I paint, I can paint in here, but I can't paint outside of what's already been painted. So that gives me a lot of control over my look. So the layer is locked, and I don't want red. So I'm going to go with kind of a lighter brown. And I'm going to come in and just begin to throw in some clouds. And I'm not being particularly picky about my color choices at this point. I have my airbrush set at really big, and the opacity is almost 100%. Opacity means how strong the color is. Comparing it to paint, is it watered down or is it nice and strong? I've got it set for nice and strong. So I've got some really fuzzy clouds I'm putting in here. Okay, now I'm going to. These are called the pucks, and they let me adjust the size of the brush pretty quickly. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down. Okay, and then I'm going to come in, and that's almost a little too small. Let me make that bigger. I'm doing this at an angle because my planet is going to be angled. That's profound, isn't it? Okay, now I'm going to get my smear tool here, and I got to remember which one I used. I tend to forget sometimes because I got so many, and I don't use my smear tools a lot. All right, now my computer's having to catch up with me. That shouldn't be a problem in a couple of weeks. Let me try this one. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Actually, I think they're called smudge tools, but I don't like that one so much. Make it bigger. Make a bigger smudge. I just want to tone it down a little bit. Make that bigger. Yeah, see. There we go. And you can play with it all day long. Oops, gotta get back in my airbrush here. Just the airbrush is in digital work. The airbrush is one of the most versatile of all the tools, and if you do much, you're gonna probably use that as much or more than any of them. Okay. Now, the computer is taking its time. Got a nice little pattern going here. Okay, so Now I want to make it look a little bit more planety, so I'm going to, I don't know if planety is a word. I'm going to come back up here, and now I'm going to get my black. Let's go all the way down to black, because space is black. And I'm going to come in. Oops, I'm still on the smear tool. That doesn't work. Need to be on my airbrush. Come on, airbrush. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to come in. And remember, if you watched Pat, you know that she said you need to decide where your light source is. I'm picking my light source up here. Okay, so I'm going to go to a white. I'm going to make it just a little bit off-white, kind of a cream color. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the layer right below, and I'm going to go to black. Almost done here. And make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to go to flood fill. Aha, there we go. And I'll get out of that. Go back to my airbrush and get back on the proper layer. I just want to come real softly here. And there you have, let me take that back up. There we go. There you have a Jupiter-ish type planet. And if I want to, then I can come up here. I've got to unlock the layer. And then I can come back up to my quick transform. And I can shrink that down. And then move it if I want to move it somewhere else. And then I can maybe come in here and draw a couple other planets, throw in some stars, view nebula, and you can have yourself a regular space scene. Now, if I were going to spend more time on it, I would soften these edges. They're a little bit stark, but we are out of time. So that is all for today. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light. I'm sure glad you joined us today.